on this episode of A Tale of Two Hygienists.
The reason we introduced the product is to negate all the other bad products that are out there. So you can educate until you're, the end of days, but if you don't provide a solution like a new product that is oral microbiome friendly, then what's the point? The good news is that people now have choices and they can educate themselves. It can be TikTok, it can be Instagram, it can be a study, it can be their dentist, it can be their hygienist, and they have choices. If they don't want fluoride, or if they don't want fluoride for their children's developing brains, there are alternatives, safe alternatives, and that's wonderful. And we didn't have that 10, 15 years ago. When we formulated our toothpaste, we took every ingredient, looked at it, and said, is there a reason for it to be in there for health? And then if there wasn't a reason, like an emulsifier or surfactant, we said, let's take it out.
Yeah, this is a tale, oh yeah, a tale of two hygienists. So there might be only one, bringing the best of dental knowledge, and we do it all with ease. We cover oral health and screening, and preventing gum disease. We're gonna do a lot of learning, and have a little bit of fun working at the dentist. A tale of two hygienists.
Welcome, listeners, into a special bonus episode of A Tale of Two Hygienists podcast. We appreciate you giving this a listen. And for many of you, it's on a Thanksgiving weekend, and we really appreciate your time during the holidays. This episode is incredibly topical, and I wish we could have said that we created this episode by design, but the timing really just worked out in a really amazing way. We have on the show today Dr. Mark Burhenne as our guest. You might know him as Ask the Dentist. He has a podcast. He has a really great website. He also regularly posts on social media. So those are some accounts that you might want to follow. We cover so many topics today related to whole body wellness and the role of the dental hygienist in the dental practice. It's pretty awesome. But one of the significant points that Dr. B makes today is that we need to reevaluate the things that we are putting into our bodies, into our mouths, and we need to share that information with our patients. We should know what the ingredients are and that they are above reproach, and he talks us through some really great critical thinking. This is an episode about awareness and whole body health. I'm really excited for the things that you might learn today. Make sure that you share this with everyone else that you know, whether it's your patients, whether it's your significant others, or maybe it's even your fellow clinicians in your office. And finally, I have some links in the show notes to his podcast, website, social media, and also about the toothpaste brand Fig. That's FYGG, which stands for Feed Your Good Guys, referring to the good bugs in our oral microbiome. Be sure to give those links a look and find out a little bit more about the products. Thank you so much for their partnership on this episode. Thanks to Dr. B for his time at RDH Under One Roof. Okay, without further ado, here is the interview.
A tale of two hygienists.
All right, listeners, welcome into the interview portion of the podcast. We're joined today by Mark. Mark, thank you for being here today.
Andrew, Erica, I'm very pleased, very happy to be here.
So, we love giving our audience an opportunity to get to know the voice that they're listening to so intimately in their ears right now. Do you mind giving us a background about who you are and kind of what we're talking about today?
Not at all. I'm 65 years old. I've been practicing dentistry, general dentistry, for about almost 40 years. And a lot has changed in dentistry, and I'm trying to be part of that change. I have an Instagram account, we have a website, we have a podcast. In the last 10 years, I've gotten into educating beyond the doors of my practice, and it's been quite a journey. A lot of it is functional dentistry, a lot of it is on the oral microbiome. I'm now a founder and producer of a new toothpaste, a new oral care brand. That's very exciting. Very exciting because at this event, I won an award. We won an award for a new product. So it's just a general dentist story, sleep apnea halfway through it, wrote a book on sleep apnea, learned the hard way about that and how dentistry is an integral part of that, how dentists actually can see sleep apnea well before a physician can. And then, ending up here at this wonderful event, the RDH Under One Roof. It's really quite an event. So happy to be here.
It's incredible.
It is incredible.
Listeners, we apologize, and also we don't apologize because there's a little bit of background noise. There's just a buzz and excitement of this type of show. And we're grateful that doctors come and appreciate this because we talk about it a lot. And the partnership of a hygienist and a doctor is integral to patient health, right?
Yes.
It doesn't, one of us can't do it without the other. And
Right.
I love that about you being here. So thank you for being here. I'm curious though, it's interesting that you kept it seems like there's like you did a thing for a bit and then you learned another thing and you went you like dove head first into it. Where does that come from? Like, why are you like a lifelong learner and like passionate about that?
I think dentists in general are lifelong learners. I mean, obviously we're told that we need a certain amount of CE, but we're curious. We are engineers. There's always more to know. It's kind of, the analogy I use is fly fishing. It could be golf as well. You can never become perfect at either one of those. And for me, it may have started earlier, especially in the functional side of things. My hobby as a young teenager, 16, 17, 18-year-old, was longevity and supplements. And it was really bizarre. I was into sports, of course, wanted to optimize that.
Yeah.
Oral health wasn't on the horizon then, of course.
Yeah.
My dad was a physician. My mom was really into things like, and this is back in the 60s, of course, like serving dandelion stems in our salads, that kind of thing, brewer's yeast. And so that was always kind of in the back of my mind. It's like, are we eating the right things? Are we doing the right things?
Yeah.
Is there such a thing as too much exercise? What's good for us? And now, of course, it's a huge industry. And it's becoming part of dentistry, which is nice. And I think that's one of the things we do at Ask the Dentist is we're trying to be part of that. And again, of course, oral health is not just about oral health. It is the big picture. It's systemic health. So I think it's just a character trait. I love reading. I'm always challenging myself. And again, personal challenges, health challenges, sleep apnea in my 40s. That really woke me up. That just came out. But because it was off the radar. I was very thin. I was very fit. I was doing 7-day mountaineering trips. I felt great. I would take a nap, didn't think anything of it, but I was snoring like a freight train. So was my wife, who's also very fit. And she's also in the healthcare industry. So we were kind of caught by surprise. And then that's what made me want to write the book, because the journey was very difficult. Even with a high healthcare IQ and good healthcare, it was still really difficult. That's improved, and that's improved because dentists have gotten into that. So there's always tweaking. I took a summer off between sophomore and junior year of college, and I rebuilt grandfather clock mechanisms. And
of course you did. Why not?
Yeah, and then delivered the clock and balanced it. And that, to me, was the ideal job, because I'm always fixing things, tearing it down.
Yeah.
I remember taking something apart as a 10-year-old. I forget what it was. I remember the room and everything. I couldn't put it back together, but I tore it apart because it wasn't working. So it's just a personality trait, I think.
What do you feel like the role is of the dental professional? We'll talk to dentists first, but I also want to get into the hygiene side of it for the oral systemic, because that seems to be a kind of a passion of yours.
Absolutely. We should be, if we're not already, big players in that realm. In fact, we know more about that oral systemic connection, obviously, than physicians do. And I have a lot of physician friends, a lot of well-known influencers as well, and they refer to the mouth as the little black box. I mean, literally, that is the term they use in medical school. And they just say, oh, that's just a hard tissue that dentists will carve up. And obviously, they don't understand how a P. gingivalis bug can get into the brain or cause amyloid plaque buildup. I mean, it's the cytokine response, complications with COVID. I mean, there's so many connections. And so I think that's a role that we need to be better at. And I think hygiene, plays a big role in that, if not even a bigger role, because it's all about education. So I think the profession's changing. I've seen changes in the last year. Before that, the curve was a little flat. I don't know if you saw the Delta Dental, the largest dental insurance company recently. They came out with a poll, and I think it was 97% of Delta patients are aware of the oral systemic connection. That threw me for a loop. I mean, that's fantastic.
That's high.
That is
That's
high.
ridiculous.
I mean, they're insured patients, but that was great news. And Delta responded to that. They're like, okay, we're going to start adding some codes and allow a dentist to play a bigger role. So I think it's huge role. It's been underestimated for too long, and it's impacted systemic health because we haven't been part of that role or position, that level of diagnostic a capability. And again, there are a lot of things we cannot diagnose, but we're screening for, like diabetes, sleep apnea.
Exactly.
We still cannot diagnose sleep apnea. I think that's wrong, but that's a controversial subject. So I think hygienists could literally they could at least screen for it, but certainly diagnose for it if they had the training.
Yeah, no, and
we
want
official
to.
training. Yeah.
I think that we want to That's our drive, right? Is to get people healthy, prevent disease. That's what should be our big push.
Right.
I know we end up doing a lot of therapeutics, because we have to.
Right.
But I think that generally in our hearts, we want to prevent.
Yeah.
And after learning about sleep, I was saying to Andrew earlier, I see it everywhere now.
Good.
I can't unsee it.
Right.
And then I think, okay, there is time for this conversation today in this appointment because it's so important for us to be treating the entire patient. And I'm so glad that medicine is starting to pay attention to the mouth.
Yep.
Yeah.
ADSM and the AASM are the same organization, really, and there's a lot of crossover, and there's a huge subset now of dentists and physicians sitting in the same conference room learning the same things. And it's interesting to see. I've sat through a lot of those conferences, and fascinating to see a physician turn to the dentist and go, I didn't know that. And then vice versa, of course. So it's wonderful.
So what's your big passion right now? What are you just all about, all consumed with?
Good question. It's oral microbiome, but oral microbiome friendly, nourishing, not taking it down, not disinfecting it. And then, of course, the result of that was producing a new product, a new oral care product. What I'd really like to do, obviously I'd like my product to do well, but the reason we introduced the product is to negate all the other bad products that are out there. So you can educate until you're, the end of days, but if you don't provide a solution like a new product that is oral microbiome friendly, then what's the point? So that kind of came out of a need. A lot of followers were saying, Dr. B, come on, it's time. Let's make some toothpaste. So it finally happened, and that's really one of the reasons I'm here, but that's where I'm spending 40, 50 hours a week on.
But I kind of want to dive into that statement a little bit because I think a lot of hygienists listening to the podcast are very well-intentioned. We really want to do well. And without throwing any of the name brands under the bus or anything, what is happening in the oral microbiome with these big giant name brands that we're already recommending?
It's a good question, even with the smaller brands, but I wanted to touch on something you just said. I think hygienists are the most well-intentioned professionals.
Thank you for saying that.
I truly believe that. So, but anyway, that's a great question. So a lot of people are jumping on the oral microbiome bandwagon. The big corporations, not so much, but a little bit. Mm-hmm. I think they're watching the boutique markets very closely, the small brands. But a lot of the boutique brands have jumped on that bandwagon too, but they're not producing a product that is truly oral microbiome friendly, or they're misrepresenting some of the science. And it's because the boutique brands don't have a PhD in-house, or they're not really able to read studies and interpret that properly, or they're just in it for the money. I mean, that's always a possibility. So there's a big shakeup coming. There have been smaller brands purchased by larger brands. The big corporations aren't really moving yet. I speak with them on a quarterly basis often. They'll either call me for consultation, or they'll call me saying, you can't say that, that kind of thing. And of course I tell them I can, but here's the study. But anyway, it's, and I think there have been some cases I've heard, I cannot verify this, that where bigger brands have sued influencers, and that's sad. But the word is out. It's already too late. But they're watching the market very carefully. Now, they're still producing toothpaste for 35 cents a tube. I know this now because I'm producing toothpaste. And they're putting it on the shelves for $4 to $5. That's 35 cents, including marketing, packaging, delivery, fulfillment, everything, right? And so it's $1 billion industry all over the world. It's a product. What product do you use twice, 3 times a day for the rest of your life? It's wonderful. And there's very little FDA involvement or restriction. It's a cosmetic product. So it's an ideal product to make a lot of money from. And I think that's what attracts a lot of the players. And that's what keeps a lot of these big corporations from wanting to make change. And I've had many circular, illogical arguments with PhDs from Colgate and on triclosan. And yes, it does kill bacteria, but that's not what we're talking about here. We don't want that. That oral microbiome cannot tolerate that. The oral mucosa cannot tolerate that. Neither with detergents and emulsifiers and surfactants. So what's going to happen? Well, the big boys are going to kind of stay the same because the money is there. And when that changes and the boutique brands get big and there's a big following or a push away from the big brands, and they will change their tune. They'll acquire and they will reformulate. They can reformulate just like that.
Sure,
I mean, that's easy for them to do. They have the marketing platform. They have everything. I mean, to Colgate's credit, they have introduced L-arginine to one of their formulas, and they took out triclosan 10 to 15 years ago. I think that they were forced to do that. But anyway, but on the other side of things, there's what I call the toothpaste wars now. So what I said earlier, a lot of people are coming into the market, whether it's for money or profit or for the betterment of that product area category, but they're all fighting amongst each other, and they're saying things that are not true, and they're making false claims about, like, for example, the percentage of hydroxyapatite. What is the efficacious dose? How much? Where are they buying it from? What's safe? What's not safe?
Mm-hmm.
There are some brands that say anything with nano is bad. Of course, nano is a 4-letter word. Nano hydroxyapatite is a product, but it's a digestible product. It's not nano titanium. It's not a product that doesn't digest in the body. So there are a lot of brands that already have, small brands, that have a toothpaste on the market without xylitol. So if obviously they're against xylitol, that's a crime. One of the great things in our field to be able to provide that sweetener, no calories, and it takes down the S. mutant bugs, right, without affecting the rest of the panel of bugs. And it doesn't even take out the bug, it just deactivates it, right? Perfect. And then a lot of these brands will add essential oils. They won't have the xylitol. They're against xylitol, and they're also against a remineralizing agent, like even fluoride. They'll take out fluoride, but they won't put in another replacement for that. And nanohydroxyapatite is ideal for that, and they're against that. They just don't want to change their formula. So there's a lot of bickering going on, a lot of fighting. Some of the more noble brands are staying above that, and they're just selling toothpaste. And the good news, in conclusion, the good news is that people now have choices.
Yeah.
And they can educate themselves. It can be TikTok, it can be Instagram, it can be a study, it can be their dentist, it can be their hygienist. And they have choices. If they don't want fluoride, or if they don't want fluoride for their children's developing brains, there are alternatives, safe alternatives. And that's wonderful. And we didn't have that 10, 15 years ago.
Are there any other ingredients or additives that you didn't mention? You mentioned, like, detergents and things like that are in some, I'm trying to think, like, what do we need to be on the lookout for in our list of ingredients?
Right. Well, for one example would be, and you mentioned it, surfactant emulsifier. That doesn't seem like a big deal, but when we formulated our toothpaste, we took every ingredient, looked at it, and said, is there a reason for it to be in there for health? And then if there wasn't a reason, like an emulsifier surfactant, we said, let's take it out. Well, that's hard to do because the emulsifier surfactant is there to keep the toothpaste mixed in paste while you use it for a few months.
Right.
It helps mix, it helps the manufacturer mix in large quantities, which improves profit so that it mixes quicker and it stays in suspension. But we were able to do it. The big problem, for example, is, so we all know hygienists actually we're on the forefront of this. And I know this because my hygienist told me about it many, many years ago. Do you remember when the rep would come in for Denquil, or what's the other desensitizing toothpaste? Anyway, it was one of those brands. It was out of England.
Yes.
And they came in and they said, hey, we're SLS free because we have a study here that says that predisposes you to ulcerations. And it's a denaturing of the oral mucosa. Right. And it makes it more vulnerable to canker sores and pain, essentially, right? Right. Discomfort and not, being able to eat certain foods. So that was kind of the beginning of it. But then a lot of these brands now, they're like 40 to 60 different versions, some natural based on coconut, of emulsifiers and surfactants, right? It's still there, but it has the same mechanism. It's still an emulsifier. It's still a surfactant. That doesn't need to be in there. That can still break down the lipids, which is the fatty layer in a cell wall, and break apart cells, and we don't need it. We don't want it. It doesn't taste great, but it is easier to make toothpaste with emulsifiers and surfactants. So that's a perfect example. Yeah. We don't need that stuff. Taking out, the challenge is to take out a lot of things that have been in toothpaste for a long, long time that doesn't need to be there, that actually do cause harm.
Sorry, this is just we'll edit this part out. This is from my own. So how do you then fix that?
Right. Well, bentonite clay. So you have to look for a body or a substance that will absorb the minerals, but it's complicated. So nanohydroxyapatite, if you buy the right version, which is in Portugal, that's the only certified safe version of the nanohydroxyapatite now currently on the market. More are coming. It's got a 3-to-1 ratio. It's rod shaped. It's 40 to 60 nanometers. It's not coated, and it has a lot of studies that support its efficacy. Again, the EU overreacts to everything, where the FDA underreacts to everything. And they were very cautious. It was a 6 or 8 year process. It started in 2016, where they looked at all nano products in the cosmetic industry. And this is a subcommittee at the EU Advisory Board for Health called the SCCS. And these are scientists that are handpicked by other scientists, and there's no corporate involvement. They don't get paid. It's an honor to be on that, and you get 2 years and then you're off, right?
Nice.
So they look at all the science. These are real scientists. And they were concerned about nano. Of course, they took off nano titanium, zinc oxide, all those things, because it's not digestible. It's there forever in your body, even by putting it on your skin. Certainly in toothpaste, that's not a good thing. And there is titanium dioxide in toothpaste in America right now being sold.
Wow.
So, but then they looked at the nano, and it was just put into that category because it had the word nano. And they looked at it, and they were very cautious. And they said there are some forms of nano hydroxyapatite that we are concerned about. We're not quite sure, but let's play it safe. And that's why they picked this version of it. And it's being manufactured in the EU. Not all toothpaste here in the US, the boutique brands, are using that. They're buying from other sources and questionable sources. And I know this because I have scanning electron microscopy images of every toothpaste right now under this roof and more. So anyway, but that's okay. At least people have choices. So it's hard. You can add bentonite clay, but clay triggers a lot of people because of lead.
I was going to ask about allergens.
Clay can be had, though. There's clay from Europe that is extremely low in lead. There are some brands that have clay, and clay is a wonderful for creams, and it has a wonderful consistency. It provides adsorption. Some people claim too much for minerals. That's complicated, which you don't want in toothpaste, but it triggers people for lead, and that's a big concern here in the U.S. and it should be. But you can find a pharmaceutical grade clay that can be put in toothpaste. It's expensive. It's a wonderful feel. The mouth feel is fantastic, especially for the gums. It dissolves. It's water soluble, and you don't have to. You can make a toothpaste with that clay and not have the Prop 65. It's Prop 65 warning in California. So if you have a certain amount of clay with lead in it, you have to put that on your label. And there are some toothpastes that have that. So adding xylitol, that's a no-brainer. Find a good quality synthetic. I like the synthetic version of xylitol. It's cleaner. It's better for the environment. You're not chopping down birch trees and just shaving off the bark and doing something else with the tree. And then, of course, there's a chemical process. You integrate chemicals into extracting the xylitol. I say that because there are some dentists that are against any form of xylitol. Xylitol, as I said earlier, is wonderful. It's a great thickening agent. It tastes great. And it can, if done properly, and we have a very good formulator, if done properly with the right ratios and pH balancing, it's a complicated product. And it's a very artificial product. We weren't using toothpaste. Our ancestors weren't using toothpaste. But it can be done. But it's complicated, and it's not the easier way to go. So obviously the easier way to go would be where everyone goes, but it can be done. But xylitol is a great thickening agent, and there are other things too.
So you're not opening up the product and it's separated and
to mix it yourself.
With clay that happens, and we had that on one of our tubes. It said on the back, it said every few days, just give it a little massage as you're going through massage the bottom and mix it a little bit. I remember doing that as a kid. I don't know what changed.
I remember doing that with
peanut
butter, so my natural peanut butter or whatever, has that separation of oils and stuff.
Yeah.
So, Doctor,
that's a good analogy.
I know we're running a little bit short of time, but I want to flip that now on you.
Okay.
And I want to talk about the ingredients that need to be in it.
Okay.
Like, what are the necessary, needed, probably exactly what's in yours.
Right. Well, you don't need much. I would definitely recommend a remineralizing agent. Obviously not fluoride. We don't need to talk about that. We'll be here till the lights turn off, right? Nanohydroxyapatite is the obvious choice right now. The whole world is moving to it. It's been in the medical industry forever. And we use it in dentistry for bone grafting and osseous work and all that. The orthopedics have been using it for a long time. So definitely a remineralizing agent. There are some dentists that have a brand of toothpaste that say you don't need it. Let the body remineralize itself. Well, we live in an environment where we're devoid of minerals.
Right.
That's just the way it's set up. I mean, you look at those wheat fields out there, it's not what we had 500 years ago. So you have to add it. And why not add it? It's safe. It's not a big deal.
Okay.
Add it. Make sure it's dissolved into saliva properly so that it's bioavailable when the tooth is kind of discharged and has its moment of demineralization. It's there. Mm-hmm. And when the pH drops back, moves back up to a more neutral pH, as that happens, these little apatite crystals will bond to the tooth structure. And by the way, if you were to cross-section a tooth, I don't know how you would do this, but let's say a baby's tooth that's still underneath the gum, it's never seen toothpaste, right? If you were to cross-section that tooth and you would look at the hydroxyapatite crystalline structure of enamel in that tooth, of a healthy tooth, they don't all come out healthy, you would see a 20 to 40, maybe 60 nanometer rod-shaped ratio of 3 piece of nanohydroxyapatite. It's a nut piece. It's a combination of phosphate and calcium and other things, hydroxyl groups and all that. That's what's in teeth. So why not have that in saliva? Because that's where the tooth gets it from when it's out and fully erupted. So that would be the first ingredient. And then if we could, I would say no essential oils, just some kind of body or filler that keeps everything in suspension, keeps it moist, and that would be xylitol.
Okay.
You do have to add preservatives, unfortunately. That's why a lot of manufacturers add the essential oils. They're not doing it to make it be smelly and wonderful and like a high-end cosmetic. They're adding those essential oils because that's a wonderful, inexpensive way to preserve the formula so it doesn't go bad in the tube.
Okay.
That harms the oral microbiome, which you don't want. So, but that's about it. That's all you really need. You could add L-arginine, which we have in our formula. That does help remineralization. There are lots of studies on that are 20 years old. You don't need much. It doesn't have to be that abrasive. A little abrasivity may be good for some people, but an RDA of less than 35, maybe even 50 would be fine. But, a lot of toothpaste, as you know, are like 250 and off the graph. I think the RDA scale stops at 250, and there's some 350s out there, and it's a whitening toothpaste, of course. So toothpaste doesn't need to be fancy. And then some flavoring. I mean, we are coming out with an unflavored toothpaste because there's been a lot of desire and request for that, and I've been testing it, and I really like it. It's just xylitol and hydroxyapatite. It's wonderful. But some people like mint. I mean, they're hooked on mint. We came out with yeah, exactly, right. But, chocolate, we're coming out with a chocolate finally, and that actually has real chocolate in it, so we're very excited about that. Yeah, so it's you don't need much, and I think you should look at a brand that's taking stuff out. It's like going to the store, even at Whole Foods. If I pick up their pre-made burritos and you just look at the label, and if you see a lot of small words, a big paragraph, just walk away. There's something bad in there. But if there are like 3 words in there or 4 or 5, keep reading. It's probably a good product, right? Yeah.
Awesome.
No, I love it. I wish we could talk a little bit longer. Unfortunately, we're out of time. Where can our audience go find more information? Where can they pick up the product? Do you guys have studies that you have on the website?
They're coming. Okay. Yeah, we don't yet, although we do refer to other studies.
Oh, great.
Yeah, there are 20 years of good studies out there. There's 20 years of bad studies out there, too. And we pick through that a lot, too. And more of that is coming. But we have our own clinical trial study and process. And, of course, we're going to publish that. So you can find us on fig.com, FYGG.com. You can also find me at askthedentist.com, my other founder, drstacy.com, Dr. Stacy on Instagram. That's about it. I mean, it's just fig.com. That's all you got to remember. Start there.
All right. We'll put that in the show notes, everyone. FYGG.com.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's a great event.
Been a pleasure.
Yeah, this is a tale, oh yeah, a tale of 2 hygienists. So there might be only one, bringing the best of dental knowledge, and we do it all with ease. We cover oral health and screening, and preventing gum disease. We're gonna do a lot of learning, and have a little bit of fun working at the dentist. A tale of 2 hygienists.